For years, his celestial warnings held Jenny and Sumit's fate in the balance. We watched as a man named Khaled, the family astrologer, gravely shook his head, delivering cosmic verdicts that dictated the course of their lives, their love, and their future. He was presented as a conduit to the divine, a humble servant interpreting the grand, unchangeable will of the stars. But what if that will wasn't written in the heavens? What if it was written on a check? Was he truly reading the stars, or was he just reading a script? A script written, funded, and directed by the very people who stood most firmly against their union, Sumit's parents. This is an exclusive insider report, a deep dive into a conspiracy that, if true, represents one of the most cynical and manipulative acts ever witnessed in the day universe. The story we're about to unfold is not just a theory. It's a detailed reconstruction based on insider information and exclusive materials obtained by this channel. If you believe faith should never be a cage and that truth, no matter how shocking, must come to light, then hit that like button right now. Your support helps us pursue these difficult stories. And make sure you subscribe to the Tell All tapes. And ring that notification bell because what we are about to reveal is just the beginning. The deception runs deeper than you could ever imagine, and you won't want to miss a single second of this unraveling conspiracy. Let's begin with the central piece of our investigation, the explosive evidence that changes everything we thought we knew about Sumit and Jenny's journey. This isn't hearsay or speculation from a random internet forum. According to our sources, this is the transcript of a covertly recorded meeting, a sting operation designed to expose a truth that was never meant for public consumption. Our investigation began when a source closely connected to the production voiced concerns about the uncanny convenience of Khaled's astrological predictions. Every single time Sumit and Jenny seemed to be on the verge of a breakthrough, every time they overcame a logistical or familial hurdle, the cosmos would suddenly and inexplicably conspire against them. Saturn would shift, a planetary house would become unfavorable, or some ancient obscure alignment would manifest to demand more patience, more waiting, more heartbreak. It was a pattern so reliable it started to look less like cosmic intervention and more like a carefully managed timeline of obstruction. To verify these suspicions, our network of investigators reportedly hired a specialist, a man we will refer to as Mr. Singh, a private investigator known for his discretion and his expertise in uncovering familial and financial fraud. Mr. Singh's task was simple yet brilliant in its execution: to approach Khaled not as a journalist but as a potential client, with a very specific and very familiar problem. He was to pose as a wealthy, concerned father from Delhi whose son was determined to marry a woman the family deemed entirely unsuitable. The cover story was meticulously crafted to mirror Sumit and Jenny's situation with uncanny precision. An older woman, a foreigner from a different culture, a match that brought shame and dishonor upon his prestigious family name. Mr. Singh, playing the role of the desperate patriarch, was armed with a hidden camera and a single objective: to see if the will of the stars was in fact for sale. The meeting allegedly took place in Khaled's modest office, the same one we've caught glimpses of on the show. The air, as described in the investigators' notes, was thick with the scent of sandalwood incense, and astrological charts covered the walls, creating an immediate atmosphere of ancient wisdom and spiritual authority. Khaled was, by all accounts, exactly as he appears on television, calm, serene, and speaking in the soft, measured tones of a man accustomed to holding people's destinies in his hands. The initial phase of the consultation was standard. Mr. Singh explained his predicament, his voice filled with feigned anguish and despair. Khaled listened patiently, nodding with practiced empathy. He asked for the birth dates and times of the son and his unsuitable partner, punching the details into his computer and studying the complex charts that appeared on screen. He spoke of traditional astrological challenges, a difficult Venus placement here, a malefic aspect from Mars there, For the first minutes, it was a textbook astrological reading, the kind one might receive from any legitimate practitioner. But Mr. Singh was trained to be patient. He knew his moment would come. He pushed gently. At first, then with more urgency. This is a disaster for my family, for our reputation, Mr. Singh lamented, his voice cracking with emotion. I have offered my son money, a new car, a business of his own. Nothing works. He is blinded by this woman. Is there nothing in the heavens, no cosmic law that can prevent this? Is there no hope? Khalid initially offered platitudes. The heart is a powerful force. He mused. We must respect the karmic ties that bind two souls even if we do not understand them. This was the Khalid we all knew. The wise, detached sage. But Mr. Singh didn't let up. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Conspirator ally. I am a man of considerable means, he stated, letting the words hang in the air. I understand that a deep reading, a truly profound analysis of the cosmic energies, requires significant time and spiritual effort. I am prepared to compensate you for such an effort. I need a solution, Khalid G. I need a reason, a powerful spiritual reason that my son cannot ignore. A reason that comes not from me but from the universe itself. This, according to the transcript, was the turning point. The moment the serene spiritual guide allegedly began to morph into a service provider. Khalid's posture is said to have shifted. He closed the charts on his screen and turned his full attention to Mr. Singh. The air of detached wisdom was replaced by one of careful pragmatic consideration. You must understand, Khalid began, his voice now a low, confidential murmur. The universe is vast and complex. There are infinite paths, infinite possibilities. A superficial reading shows one reality, but a deeper consultation can sometimes reveal hidden complexities, underlying cosmic tensions that are not immediately apparent. The key words our analysts note were deeper consultation. This was the opening. This was the door. Mr. Singh needed to push. A deeper consultation, Mr. Singh repeated, nodding eagerly. Yes, exactly. I need the deepest possible consultation. Tell me what that entails. What kind of offering would the celestial bodies require for such a profound revelation? The dance of euphemisms began. Khalid allegedly never spoke of money in crude terms. He spoke of offerings, donations for temple rituals, gava site, and an additional consultation fee to cover the intense spiritual labor required to uncover these hidden truths. He explained that for a standard fee, he provides a standard reading based on the most obvious planetary alignments. But for a client with a special need, a more focused analysis is possible. This focused analysis, he explained, involves examining more obscure astrological texts and searching for very specific, often dormant, inauspicious alignments. Alignments that could, for instance, indicate a period of extreme bad luck, financial ruin, or even health crisis if a union were to proceed. It is not a matter of changing fate, Khalid was careful to say, the camera rolling, capturing every word. It is a matter of discovering the fate that is already there, but which requires a more dedicated search. For an additional consultation fee, a fee that reflects the gravity of the situation, I can dedicate my energies to finding any such inauspicious cosmic alignments. Often when one looks deeply enough, one finds that the universe itself is advising patience. It might suggest that a union would be catastrophic if it were to happen now, but perhaps in 3, 4, maybe years, the planets will be in a more favorable position. There it was, the smoking gun. The offer wasn't to invent a reason, but to find one. It was a masterful piece of semantic maneuvering. He was providing a Service, not committing a fraud, at least in his own carefully constructed narrative. For a price, he could guarantee the discovery of a cosmic roadblock. He could weaponize the heavens, providing spiritual ammunition for a family conflict. Mr. Singh, playing his part to perfection, pressed for specifics. So you were saying, he clarified, that if I provide the necessary offering you can find a definitive astrological reason to tell my son that this marriage must be delayed for several years. Khaled's response, as captured on tape, is what lies at the heart of this entire conspiracy. He allegedly smiled, a small knowing smile. The stars are very wise, he said. For a significant offering, one that shows true respect for the cosmic forces and the work required to interpret them, I can perform a deep karmic analysis. And in my experience, such a deep analysis has never failed to reveal a period where patience is not just a virtue, but a celestial necessity. I can almost guarantee that we will find a strong, undeniable reason for a delay. A reason your son, if he is a man of faith, will not be able to refute. The deal was sealed. Mr. Singh agreed to the additional consultation fee, a sum our sources claim was substantial, and left the office. The entire exchange, from the initial pleasantries to the final damning agreement, was captured in high video and audio. This recording doesn't just suggest a possibility of fraud. It presents a clear and repeatable methodology for it. It lays out a business model where faith is the product and fear is the sales tactic. The will of the stars, it seems, isn't fixed. It's negotiable. And the price is set by the desperation of the client. This alleged sting operation provides the framework for understanding everything that happened to Jenny and Sumit. Every delay, every tearful consultation, every moment of despair they felt when the universe seemed to be against them must now be re-examined through this new chilling lens. Was Sumit's devotion to his parents' approval being exploited? Was Jenny's willingness to embrace a new culture being used against her? Let's dissect this further. The language Khaled allegedly used is critically important. He never says, I will lie for you. He says, I will find the reason. This provides him with plausible deniability. In his mind, he might even believe he is doing nothing wrong. The universe is infinite. And therefore, within that infinity, a reason to say no must exist. Somewhere. His service is simply to be motivated enough by a hefty fee to go looking for it. It's a grotesque distortion of the principles of astrology. Astrology at its core is meant to be a tool for self-standing and guidance for navigating life's challenges with greater cosmic awareness. In this alleged model, it becomes a weapon for hire, a tool of manipulation used to enforce one party's will upon another under the guise of divine mandate. This transforms him from a spiritual guide into a celestial mercenary. Now, let's place this alleged business practice directly onto the timeline of Jenny and Sumit's story. Remember the first time they consulted Khaled on the show? The initial reading was already fraught with warnings. There were concerns, vague planetary discords, but a full-throated rejection? Not yet. At that stage, perhaps Sumit's parents, Sana and Anil, were still hoping that social pressure and their own vocal disapproval would be enough to end the relationship. They likely engaged Khaled for a standard reading, hoping the stars would align with their wishes. But Jenny and Sumit persisted. Their bond proved stronger than the initial objections. They weathered the storm of social ostracism and familial anger. They moved in together. They started building a life. As their determination grew, so too did the desperation of Sumit's parents. And it is at this point, our theory suggests that the nature of their consultations with Khaled likely escalated. This is where they may have transitioned from seeking guidance to seeking ammunition. This is where a standard consultation may have become a deeper consultation. Think back to the specific reasons Khaled gave on camera for delaying the marriage. They were often dramatic and terrifying. He spoke of disastrous outcomes of a union that would be cursed with misery and failure. He didn't just say it's not a good time. He painted a picture of cosmic doom. Was this the product of that dedicated search he described to our investigator? Was he delivering the inauspicious cosmic alignments that his clients, Sumit's parents, had paid the additional consultation fee to uncover? The parallels between the service offered to the undercover investigator and the results delivered to Sumit and Jenny are frankly too precise to be a coincidence. The promise to find a strong, undeniable reason for a delay seems to have been fulfilled perfectly. He gave Sana and Anil the ultimate weapon, the word of God, the will of the universe. How could Sumit, a man raised in a culture of deep-seated faith and respect for tradition, argue against the stars themselves? He couldn't. He was trapped. His love for Jenny was pitted against his fear of cosmic retribution and his duty to his faith. This alleged deception is profoundly cruel for two key reasons. First, it exploits Sumit's genuine faith. Sumit is clearly a man who believes in his culture, his religion, and the traditions of his family. His conflict was always painfully real. He was torn between the woman he loved and the parents he was conditioned to obey by allegedly bringing a corrupt spiritual authority into the mix. His parents didn't just stack the deck. They poisoned the well of his faith. They took something sacred to him and twisted it into a tool of control. They forced him into an impossible position where choosing Jenny meant defying not just his parents but the heavens themselves. It was a form of psychological and spiritual warfare, and Khaled was their paid general. The second layer of cruelty is directed at Jenny. She, a woman who had already given up everything, her home country, her life savings, to be with Sumit, was then asked to conform to his culture. She made genuine efforts. She learned the customs. She prayed at the temple. She tried to win over his family, and her reward was to be told that the very cosmos of the culture she was trying to embrace had rejected her. It wasn't just Sana and Anil who didn't want her. The universe didn't want her. It's a rejection so profound, so absolute that it's designed to break a person's spirit. To be told you are astrologically incompatible is to be told that your very essence, your soul's blueprint, is fundamentally wrong for the person you love. And to think this devastating verdict may not have come from the stars, but from a back-office financial transaction, is nothing short of soul-crushing. But the existence of a secret recording, no matter how damning, is only one pillar of our investigation. To truly validate the claims made on this tape, we needed to analyze the other side of the equation, the predictions themselves. Was there any astrological merit to the dire warnings Khaled issued on the show? Or were they, as the tape suggests, fabrications designed to serve a client's agenda? For this, we had to go beyond private investigators and secret recordings. We had to enter the world of academic and theological scholarship. We reportedly sought out a respected expert in Vedic studies, a man with unimpeachable credentials who could analyze Khaled's on-air predictions from a purely scholarly perspective, free from the drama and bias of the show. We found that expert in Dr. Alak Bardaj, a fictional name we will use to protect his identity, a renowned professor of Sanskrit and Vedic astrology at a prestigious university. Dr. Bardwaj has authored several books on the interpretation of classical Jyotisha texts and is considered a leading voice in the academic study of these ancient traditions. He had never seen an episode of the show, ensuring his analysis would be based solely on the astrological data and statements provided. We presented Dr. Bardaj with transcripts of every scene involving Khaled. We gave him the birth Information for Jenny and Sumit that has been publicly discussed, and we detailed the specific celestial reasons Khaled gave for opposing and delaying the marriage. We asked him one simple question. Is this sound astrological practice? His response after weeks of careful analysis was an unequivocal and explosive indictment. He described Khaled's on-air predictions as, and I quote from his written report, a baffling pastiche of populist superstition, misinterpretations of classical texts, and outright fabrications. He stated that Khaled's reasoning was from a scholarly perspective astrologically nonsensical. Dr. Bardage began by dismantling Khaled's primary objection, the one most often cited, the severe incompatibility due to Jenny's age and the position of certain planets in Sumit's chart. Khaled had suggested that planets like Saturn and Rahu would create unending misery and social isolation if Sumit married an older woman. Dr. Bardage's analysis refutes this entirely. This is a gross bastardization of Jyotisha principles. He wrote, while planetary placements can indicate potential areas of challenge in any relationship, they are never prescriptive in this fatalistic manner. The idea that a specific planetary combination automatically precludes marriage to an older partner is a folk belief often used in rural areas to enforce soul's social conservatism. It has no basis in the foundational text of Vedic astrology such as the Brihat Parasrahora Shastra. A true astrologer's role is to identify potential challenges and suggest remedial measures, prayers, gemstone recommendations, charitable acts to mitigate negative energies. The role is not to issue a divine veto. The blanket rejection of the marriage on these grounds is highly unprofessional and leans more towards social engineering than genuine astrological interpretation. He was essentially saying that Khaled was using common uneducated superstitions and dressing them up in the language of high astrology to give them a weight they did not deserve. He was leveraging the fear of the uninitiated. The analysis became even more damning when Dr. Bardwaj examined the specific timing of the delays. Khaled would often cite a temporary but severe transit or planetary movement as a reason why the wedding must be postponed for another year or two. He would point to a chart and declare that a marriage during this window would be catastrophic. According to Dr. Bardage, this is where the deception was most apparent. I have reviewed the planetary transits for the years in question. His report states, while every year contains periods of caution for any individual, the specific multi-year prohibitions cited by this individual are astoundingly baseless. He appears to be cherry-picking minor negative aspects and exaggerating their importance to an absurd degree. For example, he cited a Saturn transit as a reason for a 2-year delay. In reality, that transit would present a minor challenge for a period of a few months at most. His prescription of a multi-year delay is astrologically indefensible. It suggests one of two things. Either he is profoundly incompetent or he was deliberately creating a desired outcome for his clients regardless of what the actual charts indicated. The final nail in the coffin of Khaled's credibility, according to this expert analysis, was his blending of conflicting astrological concepts. Dr. Bardage noted that Khaled seemed to be pulling contradictory ideas from different schools of thought and presenting them as a single coherent reading. It would be akin to a doctor diagnosing a patient using principles from both century bloodletting and modern genetic science, applying whichever theory best fit the conclusion he wanted to reach. He is creating an astrological salad of convenience. Dr. Bardage concluded the predictions lack any coherent doctrinal foundation. They are a clear example of what we call results-based astrology, where the astrologer begins with the desired conclusion, in this case that the marriage must not happen, and then works backwards, selectively choosing and misinterpreting planetary data to support that foregone conclusion. This is not an act of interpretation. It is an act of invention. It is in my professional opinion a gross misrepresentation of the sacred doctrines of Vedic astrology. Let's pause and absorb the weight of this. We have two independent powerful pieces of evidence. First, we have the alleged secret recording of a sting operation where the astrologer himself outlines a business model for finding cosmic reasons to delay a marriage in exchange for an additional consultation fee. He provides a clear methodology for monetizing familial desperation. Second, we have an independent academic expert in Vedic astrology who, without any knowledge of the sting operation, analyzed the on-air predictions and concluded that they were astrologically nonsensical, indefensible, and a gross misrepresentation of doctrine likely created to achieve a desired outcome. The sting operation shows the how and the why, the financial motive and the method. The expert analysis shows the what, the fabricated and flawed nature of the product that was delivered. When you put these two pieces together, they form a near-perfect circle, a closed loop of alleged deceit. The theory is no longer just a suspicion. It's a thesis, supported by evidence from both inside the operation and from the highest levels of academic scrutiny. The will of the stars that tormented Jenny and Sumit for years appears to be nothing more than a paid performance, a theatrical production of cosmic doom commissioned and funded by Sana and Anil. The man they trusted as a spiritual guide was, according to our investigation, simply a hired actor playing the part the directors paid him to play. Every tear shed, every fight, every moment of hopelessness they experienced based on his divine counsel was predicated on an alleged financial transaction. This wasn't fate. It was a fraud. Now, we must consider the architects of this alleged conspiracy. Sumit's parents, Sakna and Anil. What could drive them to such extraordinary lengths? From their perspective, they were likely acting out of what they believed to be love, or at least a desperate desire to protect their family's honor and their son's future as they envisioned it. In their world, a son marrying a woman years his senior, a foreigner who could not provide them with grandchildren, was not just a personal choice. It was a public catastrophe. It was a failure of their parenting, a stain on their reputation, and a disruption of the natural order of their society. They tried everything else. They yelled, they cried, they threatened, they emotionally blackmailed, they disowned him, and nothing worked. Sumit, while deeply pained by their disapproval, remained steadfast in his love for Jenny. He was willing to endure their anger. He was willing to be an outcast. But the one thing he was not willing to do was defy his religion. He would not risk cosmic punishment or spiritual ruin. And this, it seems, was the vulnerability his parents finally decided to exploit. If you can't convince your son with earthly arguments, convince him with heavenly ones. If he won't listen to his mother, make him listen to God. It is in its own way a stroke of tactical genius, albeit a monstrously cynical one. They found Sumit's spiritual pressure point and leaned on it with all their might. They outsourced their parental authority to the cosmos, using Khaled as their intermediary. This allowed them to maintain a veneer of spiritual concern while engaging in a ruthless campaign of psychological manipulation. They could say, it's not us, Sumit, it's the stars. We are just as heartbroken as you are. But we cannot argue with fate. It was the perfect unassailable argument, the ultimate trump card in their long and bitter war against Jenny. They turned his own faith into a prison. And Khaled allegedly handed them the key. The level of premeditation required for such a scheme is chilling. It means they had to find an astrologer willing to play this role. It means they had to negotiate a price. It means they had to sit in that office and actively commission a spiritual attack against their own son and the woman he loves. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a Calculated long-term strategy of emotional and spiritual attrition designed to wear Jenny and Sumit down. Until they simply gave up. It is the ultimate spiritual fraud. A betrayal so profound it's hard to fully comprehend. They didn't just lie to their son. They allegedly lied to him about the nature of the universe and his place within it. They warped his reality all to get their way. The question we must now face, the one that leads us into the final act of this tragedy, is what happens when the truth of such a monumental deception is finally revealed? What happens when the puppet realizes who has been pulling the strings? We have laid out the evidence piece by painstaking piece. We have the alleged transcript from the sting operation, a chilling account of how celestial warnings can be bought and sold. We have the damning report from the Vedic scholar who academically dismantled Khaled's on-air predictions, labeling them as nonsensical fabrications designed to achieve a predetermined outcome. The case we built points to a coordinated campaign of spiritual manipulation allegedly orchestrated by Sumit's parents and executed by their family astrologer, Khaled. The motive was control. The weapon was faith. The victims were Jenny and Sumit. But evidence is one thing. The fallout, the human cost of the deception is another entirely. This brings us to the final most crucial part of our investigation, the reckoning. What happens when the carefully constructed illusion is shattered? Our sources have detailed a hypothetical but powerful scenario. A moment where the truth is finally brought into the light. We have to imagine the scene. Sumit, after years of being ground down between the gears of family duty and romantic love, is presented with the unvarnished truth of this alleged conspiracy. In this scenario, the evidence is not presented with malice, but with a heavy heart by someone who wants him to finally be free. Perhaps it's a producer from the show who has grown to care for the couple, or an independent party who has pieced this all together much as we have. Sumit is sat down in a quiet room. Away from the cameras, away from his parents, away from Jenny. He is told gently that there is something he needs to see regarding Khaled. His initial reaction would likely be one of confusion, perhaps even defensiveness. Khaled to him is not just some television personality. He is a man of God, a figure of spiritual authority who has been a part of his family's life. 2. Question Khaled is to question the very framework of the spiritual guidance he has always trusted. The first piece of evidence presented is the expert report from Dr. Bardage. Sumit is shown the analysis, the point-by-point breakdown of how Khaled's predictions were astrologically baseless. He reads the words gross misrepresentation, doctrinal incoherence, results-based astrology. At this stage, Sumit would likely be in denial. He might say, this is just one man's opinion. Astrology is a complex science. Different practitioners have different interpretations. My parents trust Khaled. He would cling to the familiar, to the system he has been taught to believe in. His mind would be searching for any reason to dismiss this troubling information. He has staked years of his life, his emotional well-being and his relationship with Jenny on the validity of Khaled's words. To accept that they were nonsense would be to accept that a huge portion of his suffering was for nothing. It's a painful truth for anyone to confront. But then the second piece of evidence is introduced. The video file is played. It's the hidden camera footage from the sting operation. Sumit leans in watching the screen intently. He sees the familiar office, the familiar face of Khaled, and he hears the familiar serene voice. But the words are different. He hears the investigator, Mr. Singh, lay out his problem, the older, unsuitable foreign woman. He watches as the conversation shifts from spiritual guidance to financial negotiation. He hears Khaled talk about a deeper consultation, an additional fee, a dedicated search for inauspicious cosmic alignments. He hears the promise, the guarantee that for the right price, a reason for a delay of several years can and will be found. In that moment, Sumit's world would stop. The blood would drain from his face. Every word Khaled says to the investigator is a direct echo of the service he provided to his parents. The inauspicious alignments were the very roadblocks thrown in his and Jenny's path. The delay of years was the exact sentence they were handed down time and time again. It wouldn't be a vague similarity. It would be a direct transcript of the business model that has dictated his life. The denial would crumble, replaced by a horrifying, sickening wave of realization. It wasn't the universe that was against him. It wasn't God. It was a transaction. His spiritual crisis, his cosmic torment, was a paid service. The final most powerful objection his parents had, the one he could not argue against, the one rooted in faith and the divine will of the cosmos, was a lie, a paid deception. The impact of this revelation on Sumit would be nothing short of seismic. It would shatter not just his trust in one man but the entire foundation of parental authority he has struggled under for his entire life. His parents' authority was always rooted in tradition and culture and ultimately in a claim to spiritual righteousness. They were not just his parents. They were the guardians of his dharma, his righteous path. They used this position to justify their every demand and every objection. But this act, this alleged hiring of Khaled to fabricate divine will transcends any normal parental disagreement. This is not about them wanting what's best for him. This is not about them being protective. This is a profound act of spiritual violation. They took his deepest beliefs, his faith in karma, in destiny, in the wisdom of the stars, and used them as a leash. They didn't just disagree with his choice. They allegedly conspired to create a false spiritual reality to control him. The respect a child has for a parent is built on a foundation of trust. The belief that even in disagreement, their parent has their fundamental best interest at heart. This act would prove to Sumit that their primary interest was not his happiness, but his obedience. Their primary goal was not his well-being, but the preservation of their own social standing and their control over his life. The last roadblock to his marriage would not just be removed, it would be obliterated. For years, the roadblock was Sumit's own internal conflict. His inability to fully break from his parents because on some level, he believed their objections came from a place of love and wisdom, however misguided. He was trying to find a way to reconcile his love for Jenny with his duty to them. But this revelation would reframe everything. Their objection was never just a preference. It was a campaign. Their tears were not just of sadness but of manipulation. Their appeals to tradition were not just about culture but about control. The spiritual authority they wielded was not earned. It was bought. In that moment of clarity Sumit would realize that he owes them nothing more. The contract of filial piety of a son's duty is predicated on the good faith of the parents and they, in the most cynical way imaginable, had broken that faith. He would finally be free. Free from the guilt, free from the obligation, and free from the fear that he was defying the universe. He would realize the only thing he was defying was a paid invoice. His path to marrying Jenny would suddenly become clear, not because the stars had finally aligned, but because he would finally understand that the stars were never crossed in the first place. They were bought. This brings the conspiracy full circle, but it also forces us to widen the lens. If this practice is possible, if a spiritual figure on a major television show can allegedly operate this way, who else is doing it? The user's prompt to us was to investigate other experts from the show, and our sources suggest this is a valid and necessary line of inquiry. The day Fiancé universe is populated by a host of intermediaries, translators, family counselors, immigration lawyers, and other cultural guides. We are meant to see them as neutral parties, facilitators of communication and understanding. But what if they aren't? What if Khaled is not an isolated case, but a symptom of a larger, more troubling pattern? Let's consider the role of a translator. We've seen countless scenes where a tense family conversation is filtered through a third party. The drama often hinges on the exact translation of a phrase.